Hi, and welcome to Chapter 1, The Sociological Point of View. I'm Miss Skull. In Chapter 1, we're going to cover the ground floor of sociology. It may not be the most exciting lesson you've ever sat through, but it's going to be the most important one for sociology. In Chapter 1, you're going to be introduced to people, the perspectives of sociology, as well as some very important vocabulary that you've already been working on. This is also going to be our first opportunity to use our interactive notebook. There will be some video lessons contained in this slide presentation, which you're also expected to view. And as always, I'm available for Q&A whenever you need. Take a look at this image here. What do you see? Before you write anything down, let's analyze the image before you. There are people. They're doing something. Who do you think they are? What do you think they're doing? Why are they wearing what they're wearing? Why are they shopping for what they're shopping for? Is this a normal event in this group's life, or is this possibly some extraordinary event that they don't get to partake in? On the left side of your notebook, your interactive notebook, I want you to write this question down. Chapter 1, right now, what do you see? Take some time, think about the image, process the image, and jot down some thoughts that you have about what might be going on. So take a time out from the slide presentation right now and do that before you go forward. All right, I'm back. Let me make me smaller. So here's the deal. Foundations in sociology. The sociological perspective, looking at the society around us using sociology, is going to open up worlds that you may never have known existed. And it's going to give you a fresh perspective on the world that you're living in right now. It's going to enable you to gain a new vision of social life, and it's also going to help you understand your group membership, what groups you belong to, what groups you don't belong to, and why. The sociological perspective is also going to examine society. Group of people who share culture and territory. We live in several layers of society. You have your society that you live in your house, the people that live with you, whether they're blood related or not. You also have the society that you live in the city that you live in. You also have a society in the state that you live in the country that you live in. And then if you really wanted to go further out, the society of humans that exist on our planet. Another really important vocabulary term is social location. And social location is going to allow sociologists and future sociologists like you to understand the experiences that a person goes through based upon their social location. What kind of a family were they raised in? What kind of a town were they raised in? What kind of education did this person acquire through their life? What group membership does this person have through their life? And all of this comes together to help with the sociological perspective. One of the modern sociologists that we're going to start off the course with is a gentleman by the name of C. Wright Mills. And he was a sociologist in the early to mid 1900s. And he's come up with this concept called sociological imagination. The sociological imagination is the ability to see things socially and how they interact and influence each other. To have a sociological imagination, a person must be able to pull away from the situation and think from an alternative point of view. This ability is central to one's development of the sociological perspective of the world. We're going to practice critical thinking skills where you're going to step outside of your comfort zone, the things that you know and the things that you understand, and be able to analyze the experiences that other people and other groups of people have based upon their experiences. Mills proposed his ideal version of this sociological practice, sociological imagination, and it hinged on the importance of recognizing how the individual experience and the worldview are products of both the historical content in which you sit and the everyday immediate environment which the individual exists. For this lesson, if we were in person, I would normally show you this wonderful movie called It's a Wonderful Life. Came out in 1946. Frank Capra produced and directed it, and it stars Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart plays a character by the name of George Bailey. And George Bailey's had a rough go of it. He's got big dreams. He wants to get out of his small town. He wants to travel the world. He wants to make money. He wants to do things. But his life didn't really turn out that way. And he feels very trapped. He's married now. He's got a house. He's got kids. He's running a business. The business isn't going very well, and it all comes down to one night where he decides that he's just can't take anymore. I show the film It's a Wonderful Life in sociology class because it demonstrates the power that one person has in the life of others, even if they don't realize it. That's the concept that C. Wright Mills is working with. There are outside influences on your life, and there are influences that you create on other people's experiences. So in this scene, George meets his guardian angel. His guardian angel is named Clarence. The scene is about 4 minutes long, but it kind of sums up where George's experience is going to go for the rest of the movie. Mills emphasizes the importance of seeing the connections between the social structure and the individual experience and agency, connecting history with biography. History, what's going on around you; biography, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. One way we can think about this is he offered to recognize that there are personal troubles and there are public issues. If you are having a personal trouble, that's closest to you. That's the experience that has the most direct impact on you, that you also have the most direct impact on as well. And then there are public issues. An issue is a much broader experience that affects not only you, maybe your family, maybe your immediate society that you live in, the state that you live in, the country that you live in. It is much more public, and other people may be experiencing similar troubles and issues. Here's another video lesson for you. It's about 4 or 5 minutes long. About sociological imagination. So please make sure that you view this when you have the chance. So what do we study in the social sciences? I am a social studies teacher, and social sciences is like a giant umbrella. There's history, there's anthropology, there's psychology, there's economics, there's political science, and there's sociology. Within each of these content areas, there are subsets. So say you were really interested in history, but you're only interested in early American history. There's a degree for you. Say you're interested in economics. There's micro and macro economics. Say you're interested in political science. There's political science, and then there's international political science. Sociology is interested in social interaction. It's right there in the name. We observe social phenomena. We watch what's going on in the world around us to try to come up with a sense of a pattern, or to fix something that might be broken, or to promote something new, something that could solve a lot of problems. And this is where it's important to adopt a sociological perspective. Think of a sociological perspective as putting on sunglasses and walking outside, and you see the world through the shade of the sunglasses that you're wearing. The origins of sociology don't go back very far. It is a relatively new discipline. It emerged in the 19th century, so in the mid 1800s. And it gained steadily in popularity, although it's still kind of hard to find a school that offers a master's degree or a doctorate in sociology. It originally grew out of the upheaval during the Industrial Revolution. If you're a history geek like I am, you'll understand that there were several waves or stages of the Industrial Revolution, each having an impact on a different country or different use of technology that changed human life somehow. And sociology uses that, the Industrial Revolution, to help explain what's going on in people's lives. Don't forget, there was also the American Revolution, and which inspired the French Revolution, which inspired new countries and new types of governments around the world. Sociology is also very interested in that. Sociology is a science, so we do use the scientific method. The earliest sociologist that we're going to talk about is Auguste Comte. And he's very early in the field of sociology. He is the founder of sociology, the father of sociology. And he developed this concept called positivism. He proposed the idea that applying the scientific method to the world will help better regulate the science of sociology, and in turn will help better regulate society itself. His aim was to make society a better place for all, and that we must observe society in order to uncover the hidden laws of nature. Herbert Spencer is another famous early sociologist. He coined the phrase social Darwinism. He's going to disagree with Comte. He does not believe that reform should be the goal. He believes that we should just sit back, study society, analyze what's going on, and then it's up to that particular society if they want to improve or remain with the status quo. This concept of social Darwinism says that there's almost a fatalistic perspective that within society there are successful groups of people and there are groups of people that are not successful economically, militarily, educationally. These groups of people that are not as successful will eventually go away one way or another. And he promotes this concept of only the fittest members of society will promote and produce an advanced society, a better society. Karl Marx is an interesting character in the social sciences. We use him in political science, we use him in world history, we use him in US history, and we use him in sociology. Again, he's very early on in the field of sociology. He is a rebel. He is a troublemaker. He gets kicked out of several countries because he's promoting this upheaval in politics, where the lowest, most disadvantaged groups in society will rise up and take over control of the resources in society and take over the government. He says that this will happen through class conflict. There are two major, huge vocabulary terms for you that I want you to make sure that you write down on the right side of your notebook. They're underlined right here in this slide. bourgeoisie, that's how you say that word, and the proletariat. Highlight those words and those terms for me in two different colors. The bourgeoisie are the people who have the power. They're the haves. They own the property. They own all of the resources. They pay the proletariat to produce the product that resource uses. The proletariat are the people who are getting exploited. They're the have-nots. And Karl Marx says that there's this constant struggle, this class conflict in society, where it can only end successfully if the proletariat rises up together to gain control over the resources that the bourgeoisie has and to kick them out of powers. Ultimately, in Karl Marx's Marxist theory, this would result in a classless society where people would be equal to each other. It is a very careful note that I want you to make right now. You may have learned in your political science classes or in your history classes about government theory called communism. And we have some communist states in the world today. China is communist. Cuba is communist. They've used Karl Marx's teachings as inspiration, but communism is not exactly the same as Marxism. Emil Durkheim is another really important early sociologist. And his goal was to create sociology as an academic discipline, as a respected academic discipline that would be offered in colleges around the world. He did a really famous study on suicide, where he analyzed who is most likely to commit suicide, what age range that person is, what religious background that person is, and what impact that person's suicide may have on others in the family and the society that the person lived in. That monumental study helped seal the fact that sociology, yes, was a true field of academics. And that study also still holds true today. One of the factors that he found in his study is the concept of social integration, how closely we are tied to a group. If you come from a very close-knit family, if you come from a close-knit religious faith background, if you see yourself as a valued member of the society that you live in, then suicide is least likely for you. That key factor, social integration, still holds true today. Max Weber is another early sociologist. Weber disagreed with Karl Marx in that he didn't believe that economics was going to be the force for social change. Max Weber believed in religion. In the Jewish faith, there is this concept of making the world a better place for you and the members of society around you. In the Catholic faith, there's the same thing. In the Protestant faith, there's the same thing. In the Muslim faith, there's the same thing. Faiths and philosophies around the globe have this concept. Max Weber focuses in on what he's going to call the Protestant ethic. And that means the harder you work as a Protestant believer, the more reward you will reap when it is your judgment time. But the harder you're working right now, and that means quite literally in a job, making money, making your life better and the betterment of the people around you, also is, according to Max Weber, a fundamental layer of capitalism. Capitalism is the complete opposite of communism, which you just learned about on the previous page. Communism, everybody takes part in the economy and everybody is rewarded in the economy. In capitalism, everybody takes part in the economy, but the harder you work, then the more benefits you reap from that economy. So again, he considers religion as a central factor in the rise of capitalism. Capitalism is the economy that the United States is based on. So far, we've talked about a lot of men, and that's because there is sexism in early sociology. Prior to the 1800s, women were considered property. Women weren't allowed to go to school. If a young woman found herself with an education, there were very little avenues that she could pursue in society. You might just be a teacher. You might just be a housewife. So very few women attained degrees, college degrees. Very few of them attained sociology degrees. And if they did, they were pretty much ignored. Harriet Martineau is one of the first women in the field of sociology. And for a while, she had to disguise her sex in order to have people appreciate some of the things that she was bringing to the field of sociology. Here's an image of Harriet Martineau, and I think this says a lot about her. Because remember, during this time period, there wasn't access to cameras. If you wanted yourself to be remembered for future generations, you had a painting done of you. So first off, that cost quite a lot of money. And second off, it took quite a lot of time. You had to sit for a week or two with the artist and be accessible. So that meant that you couldn't work in your home like you normally do. You couldn't do the dishes, you couldn't take care of the kids, you couldn't work in the fields. So this limited who could have a portrait taken of them. Now look what she's wearing, and look what objects she has in this painting of hers. You're going to notice that there's a book and a piece of paper and a quill pen. She seems to be wearing a very, very nicely made dress, which also has a shawl that she has draped elegantly over her shoulder. These items would all be items that she values in her life, but that maintain her status as well. The more books you had in your home, the wealthier you were considered. To have paper, to know how to write, was also a sign of wealth and education. Jane Addams is going to cross over into the more modern field of sociology. She's going to really help start it, but she doesn't really get that recognition. Again, we use her in history when we talk about immigration here in the United States. In sociology, that immigration is also studied, but also the impact that the resources that Jane Addams was able to create for immigrant populations in inner cities is also studied. So Jane Addams, a little bit more about her. She co-founded Hull House in Chicago, where you could go if you were a new immigrant, you had just arrived, you may not even know English, you may not even have a job when you first come here. You can go and she will help get you on your feet. There are classes, educational classes, where you're going to learn English, you're going to learn math, you're going to learn secretarial skills, you're going to learn child care skills, you're going to learn job skills, and then you're going to time out of Hull House and become a successful member of the society, and then a new influx of immigrants will be able to come in. Another sociologist that doesn't get enough credit is W.E.B. Du Bois. And we use him in the civil rights movement. We use him in history. We use him in sociology as well. He helped create the NAACP, and he was the first African-American to be awarded doctorate at Harvard University. His full name is William Edward Burghardt Du Bois. He was a writer, a teacher, a sociologist, and an activist. His most famous work, he wrote several books, but the most famous of them is The Souls of Black Folk, which I read a couple of times when I was in college. A quote from him says, "The problem of the 20th century is the 1900s, is the problem of the color line." That very early on, he recognized that just because there are amendments to the Constitution that now say slavery is illegal and that slaves are now American citizens and that now they can vote, doesn't mean that it's happening, doesn't mean that the field of education has opened up, doesn't mean that the economy has opened up for freed African Americans. Again, the first African American to graduate from Harvard with a PhD, that's huge. He was an early champion of using data to solve problems in the Black community. And again, if you get a chance, The Souls of Black Folk is a wonderful book to read. Here are two short biographies that will give you a further understanding of the impact of Jane Addams and W.E.B. Du Bois on the field of sociology. So let's talk about theoretical perspectives in sociology. First off, just as there is in psychology, there are theories. In general, a theory is a statement about how some parts of the world fit together and how they work. The explanation is how two or more facts are related to one another or not related to one another. And in sociology, there are three main perspectives: the interactionist perspective, the functionalist perspective, and the conflict perspective. And within these perspectives, there are theories and there are people relevant to the teachings. Here we go again. So, in the functionalist perspective, the central idea is that society is a whole, that it's made up of interrelated parts that have to work together. If it's not working together, then the functionalist sociologist will then analyze what part of society is malfunctioning and attempt to offer solutions. So like an organism, society has to function smoothly. All of its parts have to work together to be successful. And this is considered normal, all right? So when you think about the functionalist perspective, I want you to think about this grandfather clock. Maybe some of you grew up in a house that has one of these clocks in it, or maybe one of your older relatives have a clock that looks like this. This is called a grandfather clock. And the front of it has the face of the clock and a door. And if you open the door, you can begin to see that there are parts to this clock that have to be kept in working order in order for the clock to function. If you were to open the face of the clock and look behind the mechanisms, you're going to see a lot of gears in all these different sizes. Some are small, some are big, some move slowly, and some move rather quickly. But all of the parts of the clock need to work together in order for the clock to tell time correctly. And that's how the functionalist theorists look at society, that all of the parts of society have to work together correctly in order for that society to be successful. Conflict perspective is another perspective in sociology. And the conflict perspective states that society is comprised of groups that engage in fierce competition for scarce resources. Somebody has something that you want. How are you going to get it? Are you going to get it through hard work and determination? Are you going to steal it? Are you going to make your own? All of this is analyzed in the conflict perspectives. So people in positions of authority will try to enforce conformity. You got to follow the rules, which in turn can create resentment and resistance. What happens if you don't like the rules? What happens if you don't follow the rules? There are repercussions, there are consequences. So this constant struggle is a conflict that conflict theorists use to help explain what's going on in society. When using the conflict perspective, think about sports. And specifically, think about football. You've got two teams, all right? And each team has two different functions. There's the offense and the defense. When you're on offense, you have possession of the ball, and that means you have the power. That ball, that football, is the scarce resource because there's only one football on the field while the game is in play. The opposing team, which would be the defense, is going to try to steal that scarce resource away from you and gain control of the game. So the teams then are in competition with each other over the scarce resource. The scarce resource is the football. The interactionist perspective is the third perspective in sociology. And this studies how people use symbols and the meanings attached to the symbols to develop a way to communicate with each other. And our behaviors depend upon how we communicate with each other and how we define ourselves through the use of those symbols. Interactionists study face-to-face relationships. So, for example, a married couple would be a face-to-face relationship. It's you and one other person, day to day, for as long as your marriage is successful for. Think about working in a job and the interactions, the day-to-day interactions that go along with this. In the image in the upper right-hand corner there, you see two people shaking hands. That is a symbol. That symbol in a business setting represents either a greeting or the sealing of a deal. Right underneath that, you see an image of military service people saluting a flag. Again, there's two different symbols, actually three different symbols in that image there. There's the American flag, there's the uniform that the service people are wearing, and there's the salute that they are giving to the American flag. So interactionists use symbols to study how people participate in society. The symbol must be agreed upon by all members of the group in order for it to be used successfully. Here is a great video lesson that will help explain the three sociological perspectives in greater detail. We're going to use this crash course series in sociology throughout the course. In this episode, the host is going to use the term paradigms instead of perspectives, but it means the same thing. So watch this video when you get a chance. All right, here we go. Here are some bigger details, some finer details in the field of sociology. You can look at it two ways. You can use the macro level or the micro level of sociology. In that, the macro level is used by functionalists and conflict theorists, and they're interested in the larger patterns in society. They're interested in what's going on maybe at a state level or at a national level or at a global level, where the micro level is the smaller level of interaction. And that's used by the interactionist theories. They're looking at the group level, and a group can be as small as two and as big as needed, but they want to know what kind of symbols are being used to interact with each other in that group. The debate also continues over, should sociologists stand back and just analyze sociology and sociological events that take place in society, or should they analyze these events and then apply them to the society that they are studying in the hopes of making it a better place? C. Wright Mills said that we have to apply sociology to solve society's problems because we do not want to get into a World War III. We had seen the devastation of what took place in World War II with the military, with the weapons, with the types of governments, and what these governments did to groups of people. And C. Wright Mills says that we must use a quality of mind to apply sociology to help make sure that World War III never happens again. So this is a continuum, a representation of basic sociology and applied sociology. Most sociologists today fall somewhere in the middle, where they're going to observe society, detail its positives and negatives, and then offer up some solutions to that society, and then it is contingent upon that society to use those solutions. What can you do with a sociology degree? I get asked this all the time. You can do anything you want.